Whether you're a mid-level manager currently drowning in this sea of annual performance review forms, or maybe an employee totally lost in a labyrinth of dead-end benefits portals, or just, someone fascinated by how organizational systems actually function or dysfunction, really. You have an inescapable relationship with human
Oh,
resources.
absolutely. Everyone interacts with HR at some point.
Right. And for a huge percentage of you listening right now, those interactions can feel, well, incredibly frustrating. It's like you're fighting against a system that was supposedly built to support you?
Yeah, it really is this universally shared experience in the modern workplace. We've all had that exact moment sitting at a desk, staring at a screen, just wondering why a process designed to help us do our jobs feels like an obstacle course we have to survive just to get back to our actual work.
Exactly. So today we're going on a deep dive into exactly why that is, and more importantly, how some organizations are basically tearing the whole thing down to build something better.
It's a fascinating shift for sure.
Our mission today is to unpack this highly provocative piece of source material by Jonathan H. Westover. It's an article called The Case for Dismantling Traditional HR: Redesigning People Operations Around Work Quality, Not Employment Administration.
The core thesis there is incredibly bold. I mean, it really takes a swing.
It really does. Westover argues that traditional HR is essentially a bureaucratic machine built for a bygone industrial era. The argument is that HR currently focuses almost entirely on administering employment transactions, like processing the paperwork of having a job, rather than actually improving the quality of the work you do.
And that fundamental distinction right there between employment administration and work quality, that serves as the anchor for this entire discussion.
Right.
Because we are analyzing a management system that was originally designed, over a century ago, to standardize physical labor in factories.
Yeah.
And now that same structural philosophy is desperately trying to manage complex, highly variable modern knowledge work.
Which is a totally different beast.
Completely different. And the resulting friction isn't just noticeable. I mean, it is actively hindering businesses.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to understand the fundamental flaw in how these HR departments are structured today. Because we know HR professionals are, for the most part, incredibly hardworking people who genuinely want to support their colleagues.
Oh, for sure.
Nobody goes to school for HR hoping to become a corporate low block. So why does the system feel so fundamentally broken to the rest of us?
To understand the root of that feeling, we actually have to look at a massive disconnect hidden in the data. There is this profound illusion of competence happening within the HR industry.
What do you mean by illusion of competence?
Well, when you look at 2023 data from the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, 76% of HR professionals rate their own function's effectiveness as good or excellent.
Wow. 76% implies a very high degree of confidence that they are, nailing the job.
They absolutely believe they are. But if you flip it, only 48% of business leaders actually agree with that assessment.
Wait, less than half?
Less than half. And worse, that gap between how HR perceives its value and how the business perceives it, that's been steadily widening over the last 5 years.
Man, it's like two different groups of people looking at the exact same house. The builder is standing on the lawn saying, like, it's a structural masterpiece. And the person living inside is pointing out that the roof is actively caving into the living room.
That's a great way to put it. And what's fascinating here is the root cause of this gap, which the source material identifies as functional fragmentation.
Functional fragmentation. Oh.
Yeah. Traditional HR measures its success based on isolated activities. They look at their dashboards and ask, did we fill the open requisition? Did we close the employee relations ticket within 48 hours? Did everyone finish the mandatory compliance modules?
Right, checking the boxes.
Exactly. Those are just activities. The business, however, and you, the listener, the person actually doing the work, you need outcomes. You need productive teams, high levels of capability to tackle new problems, retention of critical talent.
So it's the fundamental difference between measuring activity and measuring outcomes. Let's make this tangible. It's like an automobile assembly line, right? Where the engine department, the tire department, and the paint department are all just hitting their individual quotas.
Right. Everyone's doing their specific job.
Yeah. The engine guys are high-fiving because they built 100 engines today. The tire guys mounted 400 tires. all their department metrics are green, but because they aren't communicating about the final product, the car rolling off the line has an engine that doesn't fit the transmission, and the tires are the wrong size for the chassis.
Yeah, the pieces don't fit together at all.
Exactly. And the employee is the one driving that car, experiencing a totally fragmented reality, while the individual HR departments are, boasting about their perfect spreadsheets.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism of the failure. Because human experience does not respect functional boundaries in a corporation.
That's so true.
When a person joins a company, they don't experience recruiting, compensation planning, and onboarding as separate silos. They experience it as one continuous reality of just, starting a new job.
Yeah, it's just my first week.
Right. And when those silos operate independently, optimizing only for their own internal efficiency and metrics, the resulting employee experience is incredibly disjointed and confusing.
And navigating that disjointed experience, that has to take a psychological toll on the people going through it. It's not just annoying, it literally changes how you view your employer.
A profound toll, actually.
Hmm.
Organizational psychologists refer to this as a psychological contract violation.
A psychological contract violation.
Yeah. It occurs when HR, representing the company, implicitly promises one thing, like meaningful career development, fair treatment, nuanced feedback, but the actual delivery is just generic automated training, rigid policy enforcement, and a checkbox performance review that feels utterly disconnected from your daily work.
It feels like a corporate bait and switch, like you're promised a mentor and you get a PDF manual.
Exactly. And employees aren't just annoyed in those moments, they feel actively betrayed by the institution. This directly erodes trust at a foundational level.
Which is dangerous for any company.
Incredibly dangerous. The research in the source highlights that when it comes to who employees trust to resolve workplace issues, HR consistently ranks below immediate managers, below peer colleagues, and sometimes even below external sources.
Wow, below external sources.
Yeah. The workforce views HR as a function that serves the company's compliance and cost control needs, not a function that actually supports human beings.
Man, if the workforce inherently distrusts the department designed to manage them, that forces us to question every single process that department runs.
Absolutely.
So if we've established this massive philosophical problem with measuring activities instead of outcomes, let's explore how this actually plays out across the day-to-day functions.
Let's do it.
The text breaks this down into 4 pillars. We have talent acquisition, learning and development, employee relations, and HR operations. Let's start with talent acquisition or recruiting.
Okay, so the standard metric here is time to fill. Like, how fast can the recruiting department get a warm body into an empty desk?
I'm going to push back a little bit right out of the gate here. Wait, if a recruiter fills a role quickly, isn't that just objectively good business? Like, if I'm a hiring manager and my team is drowning because we are down a senior analyst, I want that seat filled yesterday. Why is measuring time to fill a problem?
Well, speed itself isn't the problem, but making speed the primary metric ignores the quality of the actual outcome.
Okay, fair.
A recruiter might throw a party for bringing their time to fill average down from 45 days to 30 days. But let's look at the business reality that follows. LinkedIn's global data reveals that 43% of new hires do not meet performance expectations in their first year.
Wait, 43%. Almost half of all the people we hire are failing to do the job we hired them for.
Yes, almost half. The HR department is celebrating the closed requisition, but the hiring manager is left dealing with the fallout.
Oh, man, that's brutal for the manager.
It is. They have to manage new hire regret, deal with early turnover when the person quits out of frustration, or spend 6 months trying to manage someone up to a baseline level of competence. The speed of the hire meant absolutely nothing because the outcome was a bad fit. The activity was successful, but the outcome was a failure.
That is wild. And if almost half of new hires are struggling out of the gate, that puts an immense amount of pressure on how a company trains its people to catch them up. Which, I guess, brings us to the second pillar, learning and development, or L&D.
Yeah, and L&D is perhaps the most glaring example in modern business of confusing the means with the ends.
So.
Traditionally, L&D tracks how many people complete a training course. The source brings in this massive BCG study, which found that 89% of employees successfully complete their assigned corporate training.
High compliance.
Right. But when those same employees were asked if that training actually built required skills for their job, only 37% strongly agreed.
Oh, wow. So the metric is essentially measuring obedience, not capability. Everyone is doing the homework to get the badge, But if you drop them into a real-world problem the next day, they're still completely lost.
IBM actually quantified this exact problem. They did an analysis of their technical workforce and found a 30% gap between the skills the business desperately needed and the actual proficiency of their staff.
A 30% gap.
Yeah. And this gap existed despite employees completing an average of 60 hours of formal training annually.
60 hours and still a huge gap.
Exactly. The metric that truly matters here is the training transfer rate, meaning the amount of training that actually changes workplace behavior and performance. In traditional corporate environments, that rate is a dismal 10% to 30%.
I think every single person listening to this right now has a visceral understanding of this illusion. I mean, we've all been there, you know?
Oh, definitely.
You have the mandatory data security video playing on your second monitor, you've muted the tab, you're answering urgent emails on your main monitor. Every 3 minutes, the video pauses and you have to click next, just to prove to the software that you haven't died at your desk.
Yep, the classic compliance click.
Right. You finally finish, a little green check mark appears in your HR file, and the department reports a 100% compliance rate to the board. But if a sophisticated phishing email hit your inbox 10 minutes later, you'd probably still click it because no actual learning took place.
Exactly. The system records a success, but absolutely zero capability was built.
It's all just theater.
It really is. And we see the exact same dynamic when we look at manager effectiveness and performance management systems. A conference board survey showed that 64% of managers say their organization's performance management systems, like the annual reviews, the forced rankings, are ineffective or even actively counterproductive to leading a team.
Counterproductive. Not just useless, but actively making it worse.
Yeah. Yet HR keeps investing millions into these exact same systems. Why? Because the utilization rates look good. The mandatory forms get filled out by the deadline.
Because they force you to fill them out.
Right. The activity is completed even if the manager is forced to use the system or screaming that it destroys team morale and impedes actual leadership.
It's managing the metric instead of managing the reality. We are hitting our targets but missing the point entirely. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the source material doesn't just diagnose the disease, it pivots to the organizations that are actively curing it.
And there are some great examples.
Yeah. If the employment administration model is fundamentally broken, what does a redesigned system actually look like?
The cure involves organizations taking a sledgehammer to those functional silos we discussed and restructuring the entire operation around reducing friction and improving the actual quality of the work.
The article provides 3 massive corporate shifts that prove this isn't just academic theory. Let's look at Patagonia first. They fundamentally changed employee relations.
They really did.
Now, traditional employee relations is basically reactive damage control, right? HR shows up with clipboards after a manager yells at an employee, or they manage the legal risk after a complaint is filed. But Patagonia shifted this to what the text calls proactive trust architecture.
It's a great term.
I have to admit, trust architecture sounds phenomenal on a PowerPoint slide, but what does that actually look like for a mid-level manager on a random Tuesday? Like, how do you architect trust?
You architect trust by systematically removing the mystery and secrecy from how the company operates. You build workplace conditions where fair treatment and psychological safety are structurally guaranteed, rather than relying on HR to investigate after those things break down.
Okay, so structurally guaranteed. Give me an example.
For a manager on a Tuesday, this means relying on transparent decision-making frameworks. When a promotion or a compensation decision is made at Patagonia, the criteria aren't discussed in a closed-door HR meeting.
No smoke-filled rooms.
Exactly. The rubrics are clear, documented, and available to everyone beforehand. Employees know exactly what skills lead to advancement. They removed the centralized, secretive HR investigation model and gave department leaders the actual tools to build trust directly with their teams, with HR acting strictly as an advisory coach.
And does that actually move the needle on performance?
Huge results. High-trust organizations see incredible outcomes because of this: 50% higher productivity, 76% higher engagement, and 40% less burnout.
Wow. So they start playing defense and started building a better playing field. By removing the emotional friction and secrecy, people can just focus on their jobs.
That's exactly it.
So Patagonia tackles the emotional friction.
Right.
But what about the intellectual friction? How do you actually get employees to learn without pulling them out of their jobs for 2 days to sit in a seminar? That's what Microsoft had to figure out with their learning and development overhaul, right?
Yeah, Microsoft realized that content delivery via courses is not capability building. So in 2017, they made this radical move and just eliminated most of their traditional training courses.
Just got rid of them entirely.
Yeah, they replaced them with manager-led coaching and what they call learning loops, embedded directly into the daily workflow.
Learning loops. Can you walk us through what a learning loop looks like in practice? Let's say I'm a junior marketing associate and I just completely messed up a major client presentation. In the old model, HR might mandate I take a, presentation skills webinar next quarter. What happens at Microsoft?
In the Microsoft model, the training happens immediately within the context of your actual job. Instead of sending you away to a webinar, your manager structures your next daily work assignment explicitly to build that specific capability.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you attempt a new, maybe lower stakes presentation in a real team meeting. You get rapid, immediate feedback from your peers and manager on what worked and what didn't. You adjust your approach, and you try again the next day. They completely blurred the line between working and learning.
Because the project itself becomes the curriculum,
Precisely.
which completely solves that dismal 10 to 30% training transfer rate problem we talked about earlier. I mean, the transfer rate has to be near 100% because the training is already happening on the job.
Exactly. You're literally doing the work.
Okay, so we've solved trust, we've solved training. What about the sheer logistical nightmare of just, existing in a corporation? Let's talk about Unilever and HR operations.
Unilever is a great case study. They decided to shift their operations from a transactional ticket processing mentality to human-centered experience design.
Experience design.
Right. Instead of measuring how fast an HR rep could close a generic help desk ticket, they mapped the entire journey of an employee, looking really closely at moments like onboarding a new hire. By forcing themselves to look at the process entirely from the user's perspective, Unilever identified all the absurd friction points. They ended up eliminating 27 separate HR interactions just for new hires.
27 individual interactions. Think about what that actually looks like for a new employee. You have to log into Workday to request a laptop. You submit a separate IT ticket for software access. You have to email a payroll coordinator a voided check. You have to hunt down a specific PDF on the internet just to request a parking pass.
It's exhausting just hearing it.
Right. Unilever eliminating 27 of those steps is like switching from a multi-agency government bureaucracy where you have to get a form stamped in triplicate across town to a seamless one-click checkout on your phone. I want you, the listener, to just imagine how much mental bandwidth that frees up. When you aren't spending your first 2 weeks battling dozens of different software portals and HR reps, you can actually use that energy to do the job you were hired to do.
And the data emphatically proves your point. By eliminating those mundane interactions and designing a seamless experience, Unilever reduced the time it took for a new hire to become fully productive by an estimated 30%.
30% faster to full productivity? That is a massive, tangible business outcome, achieved entirely by destroying the old activity metrics and focusing on the user's experience.
It really is.
Now, these transformations at Patagonia, Microsoft, and Unilever are incredibly compelling. They prove that redesigning the system works. But it begs a massive, glaring logistical question.
Which is?
If HR isn't doing the traditional HR work anymore, if they aren't investigating the complaints, if they aren't delivering the training modules or processing all the new hire forms, who is actually doing all this work?
The answer is the managers and the leaders within the business itself.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this on behalf of every manager listening right now. The source material explicitly states that managers already spend 8 to 12 hours a month on HR tasks that feel totally disconnected from actual leadership.
They do, yeah.
So if we mandate that managers take over all hiring, onboarding, and development, aren't we just dumping more administrative garbage onto their plates? Won't this completely crush them?
It absolutely would crush them if we were just handing them the old administrative paperwork. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the core concept here is distributed ownership.
Distributed ownership.
Right. It is not about giving managers more forms to fill out. It's about giving them frameworks to truly lead. HR stops being the process owner who forces managers to use clunky systems and transforms into an expert guide and system designer that builds tools to make the manager's job easier.
How do you practically give a manager ownership without giving them the paperwork?
Look at Barry Wemler, a massive manufacturing organization. They made this dramatic shift and completely eliminated traditional HR business partners. gone.
Right, totally gone.
Totally gone. Instead, they took the budget they were spending on HR administration and used it to train all of their operational leaders in a concept they call people leadership stewardship.
Meaning the leaders are fundamentally responsible for the culture and the capability of their specific teams.
Precisely. HR doesn't own the hiring outcome or the retention metric the direct leaders do. HR's new job is to provide expert guidance, executive coaching, and beautifully designed, simple systems that take seconds to use.
Wow, okay.
The manager is held accountable for the actual outcome of their team. And because they are no longer bogged down in HR's bureaucratic approval forms, they actually have the time to lead and develop their people.
It's treating managers like autonomous leaders instead of, administrative assistants for the HR department.
Exactly. Netflix provides another famous, highly effective example of this radical shift, specifically regarding corporate policies.
Oh, yeah, Netflix is famous for this.
Traditional HR loves creating massive, complex policy manuals that no one actually reads, which just create the illusion of centralized control. Netflix famously threw those massive manuals in the trash and replaced them with principle-based guidelines.
Right. They are known for those stark core principles. Things like, we're a team, not a family. Or, we don't measure people by hours worked. For a manager on the ground, team, not family, means you don't keep chronic underperformers around out of a sense of unconditional familial love. You manage the department like a pro sports team, where performance dictates your spot on the roster.
And it provides immense clarity. Instead of forcing managers to consult a 50-page manual on time off, scheduling, and expense reporting, Netflix gives managers clear principles and trusts them to make context-appropriate decisions without HR gatekeeping every single move.
Right, you just use your judgment.
It entirely removes the administrative burden while making the cultural expectations crystal clear.
It requires an enormous amount of trust in your managers, though. But as we saw with Patagonia, building that trust architecture pays massive dividends in productivity.
It does. But it requires HR to be brave enough to relinquish control over the daily activities and focus purely on enabling the final outcomes.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. To wrap up our deep dive today, I want to synthesize Dr. Westover's 3 actionable principles for you to take back to your own workplace.
Let's hear them.
First, organizations must shift from activity ownership to outcome accountability. Managers need to own the daily leadership activities, while HR ensures the overall systems produce clarity, fairness, and productivity.
Spot on.
Second, we have to measure what actually matters and make it visible. Stop tracking training completion rates and start tracking capability growth and trust levels. And third, build distributed capability. Organizations must develop managers into true people leaders rather than keeping them dependent on a centralized HR bureaucracy. So what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now?
It means that regardless of your title, whether you are a senior executive leading a division, a middle manager trying to build a resilient team, or just an individual contributor trying to navigate your own career growth, understanding the fundamental difference between completing an activity and improving work quality provides a massive competitive advantage.
A huge advantage.
If you can focus your time and energy on the outcomes that actually move the needle, you will stand out in a corporate system that is currently obsessed with simply checking boxes.
It's a completely different paradigm of how to approach your daily work.
It really is. And this raises an important question, one drawn from a final example in the text we haven't touched on yet. Bridgewater Associates, the massive investment firm, operates on a cultural principle of radical transparency.
Radical transparency. How extreme are we talking?
Extremely radical. They record their meetings, they actively treat their own management practices as hypotheses to be tested, and they have built a continuous learning system where a failure isn't punished, it's just viewed as data used to systematically study what produces better outcomes.
Wow.
And everyone in the organization has access to this data.
That sounds intense, perhaps a bit chaotic, but incredibly effective for continuous rapid improvement.
It requires a major mindset shift. So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. What if, instead of quietly waiting for the annual engagement survey to complain about corporate bureaucracy, you started treating every frustrating workplace process you encounter as a failed hypothesis?
I love that.
How would your daily work change if you had the power and the mindset to systematically test and redesign the way you work?
That is a profound shift in perspective. It's moving from being a passive victim of a broken system to an active architect of a better one. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. As you go back to your day, keep that final question in mind. And the next time you find yourself lost in that maze of benefits links or drowning in a sea of rigid forms, remember, the machine wasn't built for the work you do today, but you just might have the power to help redesign it. Until next time.